Good morning, everybody. My name's Sally Andreu. I'm the Skills Hub Manager at Oxcept. Sorry, a bit croaky this morning. To start off, we at Oxcept Skills, we understand the skills landscape is incredibly busy and difficult for businesses to navigate. With this in mind, this webinar has been designed to really support and help you with further understanding of the new DWP, the Department of Works and Pensions, Skills Kickstart programme. This morning, we're going to hear from two gateway organisations and how they're supporting employers who are able to offer less than 30 placements. And also we've got James Gilpin and John Wood from Department of Works and Pensions, who are going to talk about the updates on the Kickstart programme. Thank you. Next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of an idea of the format of the session this morning, we're going to use the chat box. So there's going to be an option to ask some questions at the end of the webinar. It's going to be 30 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes so you can ask questions and hopefully we'll be able to answer them. The session's going to be recorded and actually it's going to be available via the YouTube channel. This presentation slides will be available, and also there's some handouts on the right of your screen there, and I'll talk about those at the end of the presentation. And there's also going to be a little survey at the end, so just to get your feedback as to how valuable the session was and if there's anything that you'd like to hear from us further. So next slide, please. Can I welcome, I think it's John that's starting the presentation this morning from Department of Works and Pension, just giving us a basic overview of what the Kickstart is and who's it for. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Sally. John Wood, I'm Partnership Manager covering Oxfordshire. The next slide. Just to give you a bit of a background, £2 billion has been put aside for what we, in the end, hope we will have placements, about 200,000 placements, hopefully, by the end of the scheme. The scheme runs until, it really runs until June 2022, but we expect jobs to be placed onto our systems by the end of 2021, so December 2021. At the moment, we've got around 20,000 applications or placements to put onto our system, and that's around about 4,300 employers and around 500 or so gateway organisations that are heading up some of these groups of employers. That's quite large numbers, but we expect that to increase over the next year, 13 months. So the important thing about this is it's about helping young people to get jobs, improve their prospects of getting jobs, and helping employers to innovate and bounce back from coronavirus. So these are real jobs. It's all about funding from the government with the grants that are given, and to deliver work experience, work skills, employability skills, those sorts of things for the participants, for the young people. So this whole experience should be that they come out with good CVs, good job search experience, interviewing skills, those sorts of things as well, which the employer can help and support people with. Important points to make is that they must be new jobs, must be minimum 25 hours a week for 6 months, and must pay at least relevant applicable national minimum wage. And they must only require a basic amount of training, because we want people to obviously get the full work experience that they can over those 6 months. Importantly, they must not replace existing or planned vacancies, and must not cause existing employees, apprenticeships, or contractors to lose work or reduce their hours. what do you actually get within this? Well, it's 100% of applicable national minimum wage. That's what the government grant will give the employer, plus national insurance contributions, and the employer minimum pension automatic enrolment contributions. On top of that, as it says on the slide, you get £1,500 setup cost, skills and employability to deliver those the skills and employability requirements. So that's what that's for the employer. And any gateway organisations that are organising this, they get £300 in order to for their admin costs and so on. So the funding of that is once a placement is actually taken up by a young person, then that £1,500 and £300 are paid, and then what happens after that is that the employer's payroll is paid, the national minimum wage is paid monthly. So each month for which the person is employed. So that's regularly paid once a month. So that's good for the employer. So just a couple of extra things around it is for people to realise that there is access to work, where if individuals are disabled in some way, that scheme, the access to work scheme, is there for people, for employers to actually take advantage of and get funding in order to improve their premises or anything like that, which can support people with disabilities. Let's see, just a couple of final points about it. Remember, it's 16 to 24-year-olds. It's about disadvantaged people who are at risk to long-term worklessness, but they will be job ready, and they will be currently unemployed, and the candidates are identified by us, by our work coaches, and referred on to the employer to do their interviews and take them on in their normal way. Okay, if move on to the next slide. Just really just some points to make about the scheme. It's about innovation. It's your business can use the Kickstart roles to benefit new ways of working, new markets, new opportunities, growth areas, hopefully. Rebuilding after the coronavirus, improving opportunities, rebuilding your business where necessary. Engaging with candidates from a diverse range of backgrounds. Hopefully they can bring new ideas to your business. They may be people with health conditions, disabilities that you've never engaged with before. So hopefully that can widen your business prospects, and support the corporate social responsibility element that employers are actually helping society, helping young people, disadvantaged people to get work. So okay, thank you very much. Hand you on to James for the next slide.
Thanks, John. Morning, everyone. I'm James Gilpin. I'm the Employer Advisor Manager for Oxfordshire. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides with a bit more of the sort of underlying detail here. So hopefully we're on the slide saying application considerations. Any organisation, however constituted, can put in a bid to participate in the Kickstart scheme, but there are some key criteria that you need to meet, and you'll need to sort of do some prep work around that. There are 3 flavours of participant within the Kickstart scheme. You can be a direct employer who has 30 or more vacancies and apply directly and post those yourself. You can be a feeder employer, so an employer who has fewer than 30 vacancies, and in that case you will need to engage with a gateway organisation who is an umbrella organisation who will be pulling together bids from smaller number employers to put in a bid on your behalf and then administer all that. And you're going to be hearing from a couple of our local gateway organisations after you've heard from us in the DWP. Worth mentioning, just quickly about gateway organisations, Mark, who you're going to be hearing from shortly, pointed out yesterday that a new bit of information had popped up on the gov.uk website about gateway organisations, and it was saying that no new gateway organisations are going to be added to the list of gateway organisations as of this last Monday, Monday the 16th. We've checked and got some clarification on that, and that means that the list of organisations is not going to be updated anymore, but the Kickstart scheme is still open to new gateway organisations to join. So that just to clarify that point. And the reason I say that is that this relates to a tool that's on gov.uk, which went on at the end of October, which allows an employer to pick a gateway, to find a gateway in their area. So it will have the majority of gateway organisations on it, but if you've got a link to somebody who isn't on the list, you can still have that conversation with them. And the tool will allow you to sort of select either geographically or by sector. So there's a whole range of filters in there to allow you to engage with a gateway organisation that's relevant for your business. If you're interested in becoming a gateway, you also need to start the process by sending an email to kickstart.interest@dwp.gov.uk, which I've put on the slide here. That is just the first step. So that's basically just logging interest. That isn't getting into the process, so you can actually start posting information. You'll still have to go through the due diligence part of the process and have your bid approved. So, as I've mentioned, our guest gateway speakers will be able to talk you through their experience of being a gateway, how they work, and what they're offering. So I'm not going to go into any detail there. What I thought would be really useful for you to hear is some areas where bids have failed, so things to avoid doing. The individual bids, you don't get masses of information if your bid fails. You'll just be told that you have fallen out for one of 4 reasons, and they won't be able to enter into any sort of correspondence about the particulars. So just to understand that the areas where things go wrong are if you haven't shown that your jobs are clearly additional and don't replace existing or previously planned vacancies, if you haven't detailed the employability support that you're going to deliver to the participants, if you haven't provided enough information about your organisation to enable the department to contact their due diligence checks using the Spotlight system, and if you haven't been able to show a sufficient track record of fiscal competence, or if you're not of a sufficient size and structure to deliver the placement. So I mean, one of the criteria that they are using, it seems to be that if an organisation has not been registered as up and running for 12 months or more, they are not proceeding with those applications. So any organisation who's applying to be part of the Kickstart process will have to supply a company's house reference number or charity commission number. Public sector organisations have a slightly different process that they use, and that also goes for exempt charities. And you'll always have to be providing your company address and the contact details of the lead in your organisation, who will be managing the Kickstart bid. So there are some questions to answer, and there is detail if you can find your way to it on gov.uk, but I think it's worth just going through this list of information that you're going to be asked to supply in your bid. And that might be a direct bid, or that might be a bid through a gateway organisation. So you're going to be asked to provide the number of employees who are in your organisation. And there are several questions in there which focus on any workforce changes over the 6 months in the run-up to your application. So you're going to be asked to explain things like what changes there have been to your workforce, particularly in terms of any redundancies or changes to the hours that staff are working, the number of staff that might have been affected by any workforce changes, the kinds of roles and functions and average average salary of anyone who's been made redundant or working reduced hours over that 6-month period. And also some information about any recruitment activity that's been started, completed, or paused, because they want to really get under any similarity between the affected vacancies and what you're proposing in your Kickstart job bid, so that you can clearly explain why you're using Kickstart to create any similar roles. You'll need to be able to answer some questions around whether the Kickstart job could have been created without the scheme funding, and if so, how you would have done that. And it's also worth sort of adding a little something about whether you have engaged with any relevant trades unions and what advice they've given you about your intention to participate in the Kickstart scheme. Of course, you're going to be asked for some sort of outline job key criteria, and so that's obviously the location. The sort of application process and the full job description will come later, as and when any Kickstart bid is finalised and agreed. One last area that it's really worth focusing on is making sure that you have put some thought into what employability support you're going to offer, when that's going to be delivered, how long it takes, who's going to provide it. You have the option to buy in support or to deliver it directly. How you're going to monitor the delivery, and how the young person who is doing the Kickstart job with you can provide feedback during and after their placement, and how you're going to act on it. A little bit scary, but again, another one that was added to the gov.uk website at the end of October was the full wording of the Kickstart grant funding agreement terms and conditions. And it's definitely worth you having a look at that. There's 3 different agreements, whether you're a direct employer, a feeder employer, or a gateway organisation. Worth having a look at that, just to sort of familiarise yourselves with the background of what is going to be expected as and when you start delivering. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. This is where we're just going to focus a little bit about the process, so what happens through this. So the process is very similar, whether you're a direct employer, a gateway organisation, or an employer who is feeding your vacancies through a gateway. I'm going to focus primarily on the employer and feeder employer roles, because we've got our guest speakers who can talk about how they are going to manage any gateway applications. So if you're a direct employer, you've got the link on the slide here. You just follow that to provide information about your organisation and confirm that your vacancies are compliant with those criteria I mentioned in the previous slide. The DWP will conduct a spotlight check, so that's the due diligence background check on your organisation, and also look at your proposal. There are regular panels which meet at least every week, and they will consider all the applications, make sure that the due diligence is satisfactory, and the aim at the moment is to email out a decision within about a month to confirm whether or not you've been granted the Kickstart grant award. As I mentioned, if you aren't awarded a grant, then they're not going to provide anything beyond a pro forma letter which says that you failed for one of those 4 reasons I spoke about. But there's nothing to stop you reapplying if you feel that you can add some more detail and resubmit your application. There's nothing to stop you doing that. It just puts you back into the process at stage 1. If you are awarded a grant, you'll get a grant letter, and that needs to be signed off by your company representative and returned. And then once that has gone in, then you'll be at the point where you supply the job detail, and the jobs will be loaded according to when you, as a feeder employer, state that you want the job to start. So there'll be a little lead time in there. If you are an employer who's feeding through a gateway organisation, so again, just to remind you that is if you've got fewer than 30 vacancies, you've got that Find a Gateway tool that I mentioned earlier. You can use that to identify a gateway organisation, or if you're aware of someone who is a gateway through another route, by all means make use of that. you will need to have a chat with that gateway organisation about exactly what they're offering and whether they're offering any additional elements of support and ongoing mentoring or training, which they may want some element of your £1,500 upfront payment to cover their delivery of that. Down to you to agree that with them. And then you've got a similar link to the direct employer to provide your gateway information about your company, the compliance, the information and details of recent workforce changes, and all the support you're offering. The gateway organisation does the due diligence check, pulls your jobs together with the details from other employers and applies for the grant on your behalf. So it's always worth keeping in touch with your gateway organisation to confirm whether and when the grant has been agreed. And just to remind you, if the grant hasn't been agreed, that gateway organisation can resubmit your details in a resubmitted bid. And if you feel that you're going to be better served going somewhere else, you do have the option of approaching another gateway organisation. So I think really, what I want to get you out, to take out of this is that there is that key information that you're going to have to provide. You really are providing sort of overall assurance and information about the jobs generically in the application phase, and that's the information that's being scrutinized. And then the actual job descriptions are not being assessed in the same way. So that once the grant has been agreed, that then allows you to specify when those jobs are loaded on. You'll also have the opportunity to specify the referral limit on the number of people who can be put forward for your Kickstart job. And that will also pull through to the system that our work coaches use to determine, the cutoff point for any referrals. So I'm going to pass you back over to John now, who's just going to talk you through what happens next.
Thanks, James. So the next slide, just very quickly in this area about what happens next. The jobs are loaded onto our universal credit system. What happens is we can search for them by geography at the moment, and we can try and find all the relevant details about the placements. We then we have candidate engagement, as it says there, which is obviously talking to our claimants, our young people who are under 25, and seeing if they're job ready, seeing what skills they may have, and the criteria that are set by the employer, and match them in that sense. And moving on to what might happen for the employer themselves is that we can actually put a limit of the numbers of people we can refer. So that could be whatever the employer states, however many people they want to be able to see and interview for the placement. And then it's down to the employer to select the applicants from the referrals that are made. Let's see. So progression. What we're really looking for is we want people to move on. So if that means that the placement, the employer feels that the person can actually continue in employment, then that's great. Or if they want to turn that into an apprenticeship or some other format, then that's fine as well. So we have been asked that question quite a number of times, whether it can be moved on to an apprenticeship. Yes, of course. So we want these young people to progress, to get the best out of this setup, and we want to work with employers to make sure that happens. So that's it from me.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, both of you. Really appreciate your time. Just to welcome Andy Marshall from Activate Learning, who's going to talk about how Activate are a new gateway organisation. Andy, good morning. Over to you.
Morning. Okay, yeah, I'll try and keep it short. I think, as has been said by James and John, different gateway organisations are approaching this in a different manner. Just to explain, we are a further education college, as hopefully you'll know. We've got 7 campuses across Oxfordshire, Berkshire and now Surrey. And we've got within Oxfordshire, we've got City of Oxford College, we've got the Technology Campus in Blackbird Leys, and we've also got the campus up in Banbury. So what we're wanting to do is, as you probably expect as an FE college, we're looking at this slightly differently. We're not about just loading people's job placements up on the website and passing the money between for your pay between DWP and yourselves as employers. We want to make sure that the young person comes out of this, as James has said, that's absolute requirement of it, come out of the scheme more employable than when they went in. So what we're wanting to do is that we're not just looking to do pastoral support and employability skills. We want to give them qualifications, real accredited qualifications, and we've listed some suggested ones there, which we've got a lot of experience of working with DWP on a number of European contracts, supporting people back into employment. And these are fairly generic ones that we do for most people of all ages to get them to a more employable stage as we go along. So if you can just go on to the next slide, please. So what we're going to do is, as we said on the first bullet there, all the participants on the programme will have access to one of our experienced work coaches. So we've got the skills training that was actually free for most people. That's part of our normal education budget provision that we get from government. So they were the ones listed on the previous slide. But what we're really mindful of, again, from the experience we've gained in terms of working with people, is about how we make them stick. How we make them stick in the placement that you're going to offer them, and they actually have a mentor that can support them. And we found this works, whether it's for long-term employed, unemployed, or short, that we actually work with them on a weekly, fortnightly basis as a touch point, and we actually continue to work with them after the placement. And again, that is actually a requirement of this scheme, and it really echoes some of the other programs that we've got, where we try and work with the person to try and find that next placement for them. If that's the case, it might be an apprenticeship, or it might be actually full-time, shall I say, normal work. So what we want them to do is plan the future careers, and we'll point them in the direction of the sort of employer contacts that we've got. So they say the goal for all these participants is this full-time employment. So we want to make sure that they're in a lot better place than when they started. So what we'll do is the work coach will also liaise with our project manager and communicate with the employer, and we'll work with you to target the training that's specific to that individual. So we want to make that tailored, but the basic bones of it will be that there will be that sort of regular contact to make them stick. And hopefully that will then support the employer from some of the burden of actually, and it can be a burden, especially for a small employer, of taking new people on and how to actually progress them. So we've been doing this for many, many years, and this will just be another phase of that for us. So again, as has been mentioned, there is this £1,500 placement, which is there for everything from a computer to workwear to maybe doing a food hygiene qualification if you're in a food processing area. But we would look to actually need to fund these work coaches, so we would come up with a value of about £500 of that 1,500 would actually be to support our coaches to do that. And we've been quite open, absolutely open, with every employer that we've engaged with so far, and everybody has signed up to this. Can you take the next slide, please? So I think one of the purposes of today was to give our experience of being a gateway. So as you can see there, I've made 3 submissions and I'm still here. I've no hair anymore. There you go. I've done 3 submissions, most latterly on Monday. They've not got any easier, I have to say, but we have managed to get out there with around 150 placements on behalf of upwards of 25 employers. And we've about another 11 who are ready to go and probably launch another tranche of 30 within the next week or so. Internally, we've gone out to all of our apprenticeship employers and all of our employer partners to see if they're aware of the scheme and how we can support them. And indeed, as a large employer, I think we have a real community purpose, we'll probably be looking to take on 50 placements ourselves in the coming months. And we're launching that program within the next week or so. In terms of the overall experience, I think as has been mentioned, I think make no bones about it, some of these, the requirements have come out after we've actually made the submissions. So we have yet to hear back on any of ours. We understand there's about a 6-week window. So we're hopeful that the ones I submitted on the 15th, we should know within the next week or so. But I think we might end up having to reapply for some of them for the reasons that have been said, because some of the requirements have come out more latterly. So we'll just have to roll with that. You know, this is not particularly news to us, but it can just delay things. But hopefully those ones going forward will have the required detail that's now set out a little bit more clearly. And, you know, it's going to be fingers crossed that we can actually do that. But we've got a hell of a lot of interest, and a real lot of interest for the model that we've actually put forward to employers. So take some questions after this. So thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That's great. And like I say, if you'd like to leave any questions, or we've got a chat bar on your right of your screen, so please put any questions and we'll hope to answer them at the end of the presentations. So we've got our next presentation is from Mark from agileering, and Mark's going to give us a quick understanding of what you're doing. Mark, do you want to just share with us what plans you've got? Morning.
Good morning all. I hope you're all doing well, and that we're not burying you in all the detail of all of this. So yes, my company's agileering. I work with small businesses primarily to help them unlock their potential by thinking differently about stuff. You could call it innovation, but that turns most people off. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience of being a gateway. So I run another organization which is a social venture that also works with the long-term unemployed and helps them to start businesses. And between us, we have submitted applications starting on the 2nd of October, and none of them have actually got through the system yet. So that's 7 weeks, just to give you a clue as to how long things are taking. So for agileering, 4 applications have gone in, covering about 145 placements. The first of those on the 3rd of October. And actually on those ones from agileering, we've not heard anything back from DWP as yet. So what I would say here is we'll put your applications in, but we can't necessarily give you any progress updates because we don't hear anything back. Now, what we're trying to do, James and John, from all the detail that you've got, that sounds kind of scary. So our objective is to make this process as simple as possible for the employers. And yes, there is 30 pages of terms and conditions. And if you read all of those, that'll be enough to put most people off. But then it's the same, most of the things that we see online, read the terms and conditions, we just click accept and move on. So there's nothing particularly new about that. I'm not suggesting that's the way ahead, but I am suggesting that we will read those all for you. We've simplified those into a 1-page summary that says, here's what you have to do to comply with all of that. And that makes it a lot simpler. So there's lots of information on our website. It's up there, and there's the opportunity to book a 15-minute Zoom call with me to suit your timetable. If you've got any questions, or feel free to ask by email what it is. And when you're ready to go, all you need to do is simply fill in the online form. And you'll see, if you look at that form, that there isn't nearly as much detail in that as James laid out. And that's simply because the form that we get to fill in as a gateway doesn't allow us to put that level of detail in for the DWP. So there's a bit of a disconnect there between the amount of information that we can ask for you and pass on and what James was talking about there, just so that you see it from that side of things. But speaking to James the other day, of course, he hasn't had the opportunity to go through the online form, because unless he's got a company registered, you can't do it. You'll be familiar with online forms. Unless you've actually filled in the first bit, it doesn't allow you to see what comes on later. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in there, but don't worry about it, because we're just trying to work through all of this. We recognize that this is a new scheme. There's still some teething issues that need to be worked through, and there's still some slight differences between what's in various bits of the website and other things. So all this is working its way through the system. I'm sure it's going to work really well before very long. So if we could just go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so my company delivered the Oxlep Growth Accelerator program last year down at Harwell. It was almost exactly this time last year that we were starting, and we worked with about 20 early stage businesses on how to get them to the next stage of growth. And one of the particular challenges that they faced was actually taking on their first employee, and it was considered by many to be quite a big barrier. So what we're doing is very much shaped by that experience, and we really want to help companies to take on their first employee, and we see this as a really great way of taking all the risk out of it. Now, we also know that an awful lot of employers or potential employers on here don't run their business on payroll, and the reason is fairly straightforward. The government talks about paying 20% tax on the first 12k, so you can earn 12k without paying tax. Well, that's kind of true, but as any employers will know, you're actually paying 25% tax on the first £9,000 and another 20% on the next 12, and it's this thing called national insurance that nobody ever talks about. So a lot of small businesses don't go through payroll. So for that reason, we're offering an outsourced payroll arrangement, which means that if you don't do payroll and you find the whole thing a little bit scary, then we will do all that for you, handle all the paperwork. So you as the employer don't necessarily need to have your own payroll in order to participate in this scheme. The other thing we offer is an employer's peer support group. And this is really intended to help those of you who may be thinking, well, it's a bit scary going through all of this, and I'm not entirely sure what I would get a new employee to do. I'm not sure how to delegate. I'm not sure how to ensure I'm getting value from them. If that's a bit scary, then we run a peer support group intended entirely to help you overcome those kinds of concerns. Okay, so from the people we've spoken to, about 70% of the people who we're working with are actually planning to keep their staff on after the end of the 6 months as permanent contracts. That assumes, of course, that the people perform as we expect, and we'll help them to work out whether that's the case. We'll help them to determine what value these Kickstart employees are adding to their organization, so that they've got a really easy business case in terms of whether they actually pay them at the end of the 6 months. We are all about creating new jobs. We're not just about creating placements. And I think that this is how we're going to power ourselves out of the recession, by getting lots and lots of small businesses to grow and to take on capability which allows them to build on their existing strengths. So that's really what we are all about. That's me. So any questions? I think that's the bit that we come to next, isn't it?
Good. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. We've got some links here for you to give you some resources, gateway organisations, and like I said at the start of the presentation, this is going to be shared, the presentation will be shared with all of you at the end, and it's also going to be put on our Oxlep YouTube. Next slide, please. And I think, Mark, thank you very much, and it helps to kind of lead on actually what we're doing from an Oxlep point of view, supporting SMEs on skills. So we've got our Skills for Business programme, which supports SMEs up to 249 employees. And it's actually a consultancy value of about £1,800, where we help if you're, like I said at the start of the presentation, we know that the skills landscape is incredibly challenging. It's very confusing for SMEs, don't have the time to look at that. But we've actually got staff that will help talk to you if you're looking to upskill, reskill, particularly given COVID, that you might want to be looking more at IT and digital, taking on apprenticeships. You might be looking at Kickstart, so obviously you're here. And actually we can work with you and help you create a training and development plan which is bespoke for your business and give you 12 hours of support. Also, we've got some workshops starting, so we've got your Encourage Your People to Learn, which is also based to help your new Kickstart young person understand the business and how they can actually get to work quick and fast for the organisation. And then we've got the leadership and management workshop, which is actually in the new year. So all of that's there. We've got on the sidebar there, we've got the interactive engagement form if you'd like to know more. And we've also got our business hubs, we've got peer-to-peer network, and also we've got some grant availability, but we need you to opt in because of GDPR. We need you to opt in so we can inform you about what the opportunities are for business support. So if you could complete that and return it to us, then we can engage you and give you an update. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. So we've got a couple of minutes for some questions. Appreciate we're running over, but we've got some time, so we'd like to just, Mel, have we got any questions in the chat bar?
We haven't got any questions at the moment. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask? We've got Andy and and Mark, obviously, and James and John here, if any of that you wanted to be clarified for you.
I think we must have answered all the questions.
Yeah, I think, well, there's so much information there. I think it covers a lot of detail, doesn't it? One thing that has come up before, I don't know if anybody is thinking about this, is in terms of the selecting of a person, does it have to, can it be somebody that you know or somebody you already work with who you can take on as a Kickstart placement?
That question has certainly been raised to me as well, and I think the rules are relatively clear. They have to be on universal credit, and so therefore they have to be registered with the appropriate job centre, and it has to go through the job centre. The fact that you know the person isn't necessarily going to bar you from doing this, but they will have to go through the kind of open process in the job centre to allow them to do that. You can't just do things via the side, because that's not how it works.
Yeah, Mark is absolutely right about that.
We've had exactly the same. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to say we've had exactly the same questions. So people who we might be working with, or some of our partners might be working with, who are searching for work, then we might say, we'll say to them, they're aware of a placement with an employer who would take on somebody who maybe has got particular barriers to employment, but they have to go to the job centre and go through that route. But if there's a quick path of getting them there, that the person's already known to that employer, they might be doing some sort of unpaid work experience there, but they do have to go back through, as Mark says, back through the job centre route. So,
Okay.
Did we cut James off in his prime?
No. I was just say you're absolutely right, Mark. You know, the Job Centre Plus does need to lead on identifying and putting the candidates forward, but there's no reason that you shouldn't have a conversation with somebody who you know is claiming universal credit and eligible, to prompt them to make sure that they're having that conversation with their work coach. So, you know, the work coach will have, you know, we're using an IT system that flags when somebody is eligible for the Kickstart scheme. And that should sort of initiate the conversation and the search to find some local opportunities to link them up with. So, you know, there's nothing to stop you encouraging the young person who's a claimant to have that conversation, to initiate the conversation with their work coach, and get them to have a look for the vacancy that you think they might be suited for. It might have to get a little bit creative in terms of, you know, obviously the search function there is driven by a postcode search. So the work coach will use the IT platform to put in a postcode, which is where the young person lives, because obviously this is 25 hours a week at national minimum wage. That's all the grant covers. So unless you are topping that up, it may restrict their ability to travel further afield. So bear that in mind. But yeah, no reason why you shouldn't prompt people to start that conversation.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Another question has just come in. Can you register with 2 gateways to get a variety of support?
Yes, you can. You can. I mean, there will be a process behind the scenes that means that you know, if both gateway partners' bids are accepted and you are included in them both, your job will only get posted once. But you can have a conversation with more than one gateway.
Yeah, where it gets then is, so we just say on when you get down to the famous terms and conditions that Mark alluded to before, that there is a requirement there for the employer to declare that they are not with another gateway for that placement. So you can register with more than one, but clearly your placement can only be with one. So there's that requirement to make that commitment, which is fairly obvious reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say we can only apply if we're the sole person applying, but there's no reason why you can't have conversations with lots of gateway organisations. And actually, I'd encourage you to do that, because as you've seen, Andrew and I offer very different things for very different people. So one of those offers will suit you better than the other one, depending on your particular conditions. And we don't really compete. We just want this to work.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just got a question from Hannah Bladen from Ignite Sport. Hannah, I'm just going to unmute you. You may also need to unmute yourself as well.
Is that working now, folks?
Yeah, I can hear you, Hannah.
Yep.
Hi, thanks. Very helpful so far. Just, I guess I've got more of a sort of a statement and a query than a question, but we work in the sport leisure industry, and obviously we're under significant restrictions, as most of the world is. But it's really hard to know at the moment when the current lockdown will be lifted and what that will mean for sport and leisure. And I know we're all in the same boat, but I guess I'm just sort of toying in with myself with, if restrictions are lifted and community sport can reopen and our site at Oxford City Football Club becomes really vibrant again, there's a real need for, in my head, a couple of roles here, a couple of new roles, a couple of assistant roles that really help us, particularly in light that COVID's not going away and we need more staff and more hygiene and more smaller numbers of people playing sport, therefore more supervisory roles. So on one hand, COVID means there's a real need for us to potentially take on a couple of these colleagues. But if things don't lift and things don't change and community sport remains pretty much closed, you sort of think, oh, it's a real, I don't know if we would need these roles. And I guess it's more of a statement around, you know, time frames. So just could you remind me, I know we can apply through a gateway at any point. Is there anything on time frames that might help me get my head around this?
Can I come in on that one?
You can apply right through to December next year, so that's the last placement. So you could actually register at any point and put your placement up when the time that suits your business. And I think, as James said, it runs through to June 22. So your last placement is last application for a placement is broadly just over 12 months from now. So you may have a clearer view later on.
So could I sort of register interest through a gateway and do some of the legwork, but then just sit tight on advertising the vacancy until we're ready?
Definitely. I'd do that. I would actually get that set up. As you say, it can take 7 or 8 weeks before you actually get a decision anyway. I would get your application in. There's no actual requirement once you've got an approved place that you have to take it. And you can time it to whatever you like. So if you do that and then you decide for whatever reason that it's no longer appropriate, then you can always just say, well, I'm not going to take up this particular place. And the grant won't get paid until you register them through PAYE anyway. So that's fine.
That's really helpful. That's cleared up. So yeah, so I think we will do that. We'll do the legwork now and then wait and see what the world looks like perhaps in the new year. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. We're just running 5 minutes over, so we'll just wrap it up. So I just want to say thank you so much to John, James, Mark and Andy for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. Like I say, there is going to be a quick survey at the end. If you could just complete it, would help us just to see how you value the session and whether you need or would like further sessions as Kickstart moves forward. But for now, thank you very much for joining us and have a good day. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye now, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, people. Good luck with it.